Hello, I'm your host Jim McClean. Welcome back to another episode of the BanterFlix movie review show. Let's see what movies we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be reviewing Bad Boys: Ride or Die, which is out in cinemas now. Our pick of the streams this week is South Park: The End of Obesity on Paramount Plus. And our Pride season continues with Fire Island on Disney Plus. So that's what we've lined up for you this week. Joining me in the studio is Danny Brown.
Hello.
And Maria McQuillan.
Hiya.
Hello to you both. As always, loads to fit in, so let's kick things off with a bit of movie news.
Thank you for using PhotoMe.
Thank you for having me.
Please note that headwear is not permitted. Make sure your face is within the red circle.
Red circle. Right.
Commencing photos in 3, 2, 1.
So that's a look at the trailer for Paddington in Peru. It's going to be out in cinemas later this year. Trailer dropped earlier this week, and I'm a little bit excited. I love Paddington. Love the first one. I cried my heart out at the end of Paddington 2 and fell in love with Hugh Grant's villain. So really intrigued by this. Hopefully this could become the greatest cinematic trilogy of all time. No pressure, Paddington. No pressure. Danny, I know you're a horror guy. Well, you know, like other movies as well, from the Fright Club, etc. But, you excited for this?
Oh yeah, I love the Paddington movies. They're so charming and lovely, and even like I watched the first two again at Christmas time, and it almost felt like a little almost Christmassy tradition. Even though they're not Christmas movies, I was kind of like, this feels like nice and part and parcel, and who knows, I might go back and watch Paddington 1, 2 and now 3 this Christmas time and have just as wonderful a time. They are just like real wholesome family fun for the whole family. It's not just for kids, it's for everybody. And yeah, I'm buzzing for Paddington 3.
Yeah, I am gutted Sally Hawkins isn't going to be back. I did love her in the series, but I'm excited by this. A bit like you, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Danny. It's a film that the entire family can go see. And I know early in the year, late last year, we had Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the prequel with Wonka, which was similar kind of vibe, similar production team. Maria, are you excited for this? Because you were saying beforehand, you're excited there's a Paddington exhibition in London has launched or is launching.
Yeah, so I think it's due to open around the same time as the film coming out. And it looks amazing. It's literally, you can walk through their house and make marmalade, I think, as well. And it just, yeah, it sounds adorable. I'm very excited for this film coming out. I love the first two films. I remember going to see the first one in the cinema, absolutely loving it, and then going to see the second one in the cinema, and similar to yourself, bawling my eyes out. So I can't wait to see what they do with the third one.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's going to be out later this year. We'll have to wait and see. It cannot disappoint us. I'm going to say it now. It won't. Paddington will not let us down. Not Ben Whishaw. He wouldn't do that. But that's one film that's out later this year. Another film that's just been announced. The sequel we never knew we needed is Practical Magic 2. And when I mentioned this, just as we were sitting kind of getting ready for the recording, Maria, you were excited about this. So, fan of the original, excited to see Nicole Kidman, Sandra Bullock back?
Yeah, I'm really excited because like it's like such a classic like witchy film. I feel like it's got like a bit of a resurgence like recently, especially on like TikTok and things, where people are like, oh, this is like this, you know, these two actresses together, this is the theme of the film. And it's like a very like wry film, like tongue-in-cheek humor at times as well. I feel like a sequel will be great and hopefully better than the Hocus Pocus one.
Let's not pull in that thread. We're all in an upbeat, positive mood. And talking about positive, upbeat things, Danny, with the Fright Club, you guys have just launched a new podcast. Do you want to tell our viewers a little bit about that? And of course, where they can find it?
Yeah, so we've started a new podcast called The Dissection. So episode 1 features Gav and Joe from BanterFlix talking about the news of Mike Flanagan's Exorcist project, and they kind of delve into, you know, where they think Mike's going to go with that, as well as talking about, you know, the original Exorcist film and then Believer and how much they maybe didn't like Believers so much. But yeah, so they kind of delve into that, and we've got a few more episodes coming out on Spotify. So if you look up the Fright Club ANI, the dissection, you should find us and have a wee listen.
Fantastic, so all great stuff. And we've all talked there about films that are yet to be released. So I think on that note, I think it's time for us to sit and talk about a movie we've all seen.
You should be careful. Your people want you dead.
We're being framed. It's just us, no backup.
We got 2 suspects, Lowry and Burnett.
You set the damn fan on fire!
Everybody relax. The fire's on the outside. Now it's on the inside.
So that's a look at the trailer for Bad Boys, Ride or Die. Fourth installment in the series, started way back with Michael Bay. Marie, I'm going to come to you first. You hadn't seen any entries in this series before. Now we have Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. They're back, but this time they're wanted men. Compared to what we've seen in the past, normally they're hunting the criminals. Now they are, as I say, bad boys on the run. As someone who has never seen any of the 3 films, what's your thoughts on Bad Boys, Ride or Die?
I think it might have been the wrong film to start it on, maybe. I mean, I'd never been interested in watching the series, so I thought it would be quite funny to go in at the 4th entry in a series. But yeah, no, I don't think I'll be checking out the other 3. I wasn't a fan. I think I spent more of the film being like, so this is the other like people in the film. I was like, Vanessa Hudgens, Alexander Ludwig, this is an interesting cast. And I think the fact that that's kind of what my main takeaway from the film was, rather than anything to do with the plot or, I think that says it really.
Yeah, I think we can say you're a little bit underwhelmed. And I get a sense you might not be going back and seeking out 1 to 3. I went into this with not much expectations. The intriguing things for me, I guess, a couple of things. It goes more so nothing to do with the film itself. This is Will Smith's first big project back since Slapgate, on the big screen anyway. And also it arrives in cinemas at a time when studios seem to be panicking about box office numbers. We've had Furiosa, we've had The Fall Guy. They haven't achieved the numbers, they found the audiences that people thought they might, and people were talking about, is this maybe a crisis year for cinemas with blockbuster season now? And it's perfectly fine, generic stuff. I think what we're seeing with the Bad Boy franchise, it's moving down a similar pattern of the Fast and Furious series, where there's going to be umpteen sequels, probably potential spin-offs as well, but in that sense that villains can become friends and story arcs can be reversed and everyone can just kind of fist pump it out and all be friends. It's fine. The directors here, they directed the previous entry. I know they were behind one other way of putting it, deleted Batgirl project, and I think they're involved with the Mummy reboot as well. They know how to do an action sequence. Maybe not as over the top as Michael Bay, the lord and master of all things over the top, but I thought it was fine. Plot itself is generic, laboured. Yeah, it's fine. Danny, what about you?
Growing up, watched the first 2, completely missed Bad Boys for Life, and then jumped into Ride or Die, and was like, the marketing team are probably kicking themselves over using the For Life too soon. But yeah, like, I think this film started off all right. I like that it kind of started with their kind of relationship and establishing that they're like 2 owlboys now, and the underlying kind of narrative of like one of them's an owlboy with bad physical health and the other one's an owlboy with poor mental health is kind of like a strand within the story that starts off quite strong, but then they kind of leave it behind for the gung-ho action of it all, and then as you say, it just becomes like a big shoot 'em up by the end, and like how many action sequences can we get these 2 owlboys to do, because they've still got it in them. I found myself getting real like disinterested sort of 2/3 of the way in. I think it started off all right and kind of intrigued me a bit, and then it just dropped off.
I think there's plot twists that I think if you don't see coming, you're not trying. And just for our viewers outside of Belfast, outside Northern Ireland, old boys,
old boys.
Just to be clear, yeah, I think it's generic. I mean, it is. It's weird. I mean, we're going to have a Beverly Hills Cop 4 on Netflix in a couple of weeks, and this reminded me of kind of that kind of peak kind of 80s, 90s. It's very off that kind of time in its sense. There's an attempt to kind of reverse the roles from what we've seen before, from kind of Will Smith's slick, confident character. He's someone now struggling with panic attacks, and Martin Lawrence is someone who's always been worried about mortality. You know, he's getting too old for this stuff, and there's been a reversal there. But Maria, you weren't overly excited by the film. But coming back to that point, Will Smith back in the cinema, did it play in your mind at all going into this, that you were thinking, oh, this is Will Smith's first film back on the big screen? Oh yeah, what's the last thing he did? He, well, probably slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars. It's been a test of his, I guess, star power at the box office. Maybe not so much here, but in America, this has been the first real big hit for quite some time. I come back to that point, Furiosa, The Fall Guy, they haven't found the same audience numbers. This, to an extent, has. But did you think about that watching now? Have you any thoughts on that? And also, as I mentioned, Will Smith's Slapgate return.
I think it's a funny one because it feels, I mean, it didn't happen that long ago. That happened, was it 2 years ago, the Oscars? So yeah, I hadn't actually realised that this was his first film post the Oscars. And I suppose that maybe would have been a part of why people went to see it. You know, it's interesting that he went from King Richard to this, but I suppose he'd already gone back into this film series from having done the third one. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, going into it, I just was like, I have no idea what this film series is like. So that was more kind of what I was thinking. But yeah, it's interesting that this is the one that's done so well in the States above all else. And unfortunately probably kind of proves in one way what, kind of made sure Hollywood film studios believe, which is a big franchise can bring people back more than anything else, or like a popular, well-loved one. And I think it was you said to me that the first one came out about 20 years ago. So it's not that this is a new franchise by any means either.
Yeah, there's no nostalgia, but thankfully no Michael Bay, although he does make a little cameo. Blink and you miss it cameo, and you will see Michael Bay. I think that's a mixed bag for us with Bad Boys, Ride or Die. That's in cinemas now for people who aren't ready to hit their local multiplex or aren't planning to go to the multiplex this weekend. Let's have a look at something that's available on a streaming platform.
It's time for some drastic measures to bring down his weight. There's these new crazy drugs people are doing. Have you heard of semaglutides?
Semaglutide?
Ozempic, Mounjaro.
You know, Cartman, this could be dangerous. Let's do it. We've been out navigating the American healthcare system. I almost died.
South Park, The End of Obesity, a new exclusive event, now streaming.
Wow. Could this really happen?
So that's a look at South Park, The End of Obesity. On Paramount Plus, we always try to rotate the streamers, and this week we've realised in the past couple of weeks we haven't talked about Paramount Plus that much. It's a streaming platform that's out there, and one of the many titles that's available and recently been added is South Park, The End of Obesity, the latest in a series of specials by Matt and Trey. They're still doing the South Park series as normal, but these kind of hour-long specials, there was a few over the pandemic, there was a few kind of post-pandemic, there's been one recently kind of looking at kind of the Prime fad as well. This one here we have talking about the end of obesity. I'm a huge South Park fan. Danny, what's your thoughts on this?
Loved it. I also loved it. I am also a big old South Park fan. I haven't watched the Panderverse or the Cred specials yet, but I've watched everything else up until that. And yeah, it was one of those things. South Park, when I was younger, was a no-no program. Like, not allowed to watch that. It's not for kids, but it's a cartoon, but it's not for kids. So then when I was old enough and could seek out myself, I got tore into it. And then after that, I would watch each season. Then I love how on the pulse that Trey Parker and Matt Stone are. And I think with the End of Obesity, like, they've hit it again. You know, they've jumped straight in, and they don't hold back on who they want to make fun of, but again, the commentary's there, and the notion of this end of obesity throughout it is just, yeah, like I think that's the thing with South Park. Nobody's safe, but at the same time, you haven't made it until South Park have poked fun at you. And to use Lizzo the way they did was also just like fantastic. And I would love to know what her take is. I don't think she's reacted to it yet. I don't think she put up.
Well, funny you say that, Danny. Lizzo has got on TikTok, because what can I say? I might be 42, but I'm down with the kids. Lizzo, there's a video where it's her reacting to the references of her on South Park. What I love about this, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's where South Park, Matt and Trey, can look at things that are ripe for social satire and get kind of really get into it, and what these specials allow them to do, as opposed to a series where you've got, well, I think now the most South Park series of late would be about maybe 12, 14 episodes. They're not like the 30 length episodes that we would see with the likes of The Simpsons from Fox, or I suppose with Disney now. But these specials allow them to take something that's much more topical, and I guess kind of the way they're able to operate now is turn around something in quite quick, and a lot quicker than they were to series, and it feels then more on the money when it's out and on these streamers. So I thought it was great. I think at 54 minutes or in around that, it's just the right length. It doesn't outstay its welcome. It's everything you'd expect from South Park. I was really impressed by it, and I would recommend to anyone who hasn't seen these yet, I would definitely seek them out. Yes, you can find the whole back catalogue of previous South Park series, but I think there's about 5 or 6. You mentioned the Pandaverse one, which was kind of the riff on the multiverse and this idea of kind of everything being kind of retconned and retuned for with female or kind of characters from ethnic backgrounds. Yeah, really interesting stuff. Maria, you hadn't seen any of the Bad Boys franchise, so I'm intrigued. Are you a fan of South Park, and what do you think of this?
So for me, it was also a no-no show as a kid, but I didn't grow up with any way to watch it. So I actually didn't really watch South Park at all growing up, and I haven't really watched it as an adult. I've only seen like a couple episodes. I think the Chewbacca defense is my best South Park reference. But it was really funny to watch it. I did enjoy it. I think like from what you're saying, it feels like they're wanting to be more topical, and there's nothing more topical than Ozempic right now. And yeah, I find it like really funny the way they kind of had the different threads going through that led to the end. I particularly enjoyed, as you said, the prescribing Lizzo. Body positivity is for poor people. Ozempic is for the people who can afford it. I was like, yeah, it's pretty biting satire.
Yeah, there's a whole great sequence, a great musical number about the American medical system, which is, I guess, here in UK, we have the NHS, we mumble and grumble about that, but then we look across to America and see what the system could be like, where you're, as we've kind of alluded to, you check for your credit card, I guess, before anything. So I thought this was great. And you've mentioned, Danny, you've seen a few. How would you rate this in comparison to the small number of these specials you've seen?
I think so. The main ones that are kind of most recent in my memory are the COVID ones, which again kind of was like a 2-part special. And yeah, like I think this one's moved just below the COVID ones, because again, I think the COVID one was allowed to kind of play out its story a bit more, and it delved into a lot more cause of the scope of COVID. But this here one, like, yeah, I still rate this one really highly. Maybe just not as good and developed maybe as the coronavirus stuff, but still up there, still really great.
Yeah, I think it's been great the way the writers have really realised, in the same way I mentioned earlier on The Simpsons. When The Simpsons started out, you know, back when time itself existed, the focus was on Bart, and that was our way. But I think they realised that Homer is our little comedic gold here. And when you look at the early South Park series, the focus on the kids, particularly, I suppose, Cartman, etc. Now you see they can have a lot more fun with characters like Randy Marsh. Just perfect. So yeah, I would recommend, like you, I don't think it's quite as up there with the COVID specials and the post-pandemic specials, but I definitely recommend seeking it out. Maria, you know, you're not tempted to go back, check out the back catalogue of the Bad Boys franchise? Tempted to seek these out?
I think I'd be more tempted to seek out the South Park specials. It's just one of those things, because it's on Paramount Plus, I am totally unaware of where it is, and I have a grudge against Paramount Plus because they took Star Trek Discovery. But I think, yeah, from the sounds of it, like, yeah, I think I would really enjoy, especially the coronavirus one. It's a funny one. I like it feels like it's almost too much of a back catalogue for me to even start to get into. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one though.
Yeah, there's a lot of streamers nowadays. That's the downside when we're trying to rotate through them, and I know exactly, I feel your pain for Star Trek Discovery, and that was one of the main reasons why I signed up to it, because it is now the home of Star Trek. So that's available, as we say, on Paramount Plus. We are going to move on, and throughout June we are having our Pride season, where each week a different contributor, someone who's been on the show in the past, picks out a certain film they want to discuss. So last week we were talking about Pride. This week it's over to Hamish Calvert with his choice.
Stupid bitch Noah every year.
Oh, I made it, didn't I?
This week is sacred. We're going to Fire Island.
And this is why straight people hate us.
Hi, I'm Hamish Calvert. I'm a local film blogger, and I'm here to give you your latest recommendation for Pride Month. The film I've chosen is Andrew Ann's Fire Island, and it's actually a loose adaptation of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, but it's nothing like the reimaginings of Pride and Prejudice that you're likely to have seen before. It follows a group of gay friends who travel to Fire Island for their yearly vacation, and it follows their relationships, their friendships, and all the drama that ensues when you put a lot of gay people together in one place. And spoiler alert, that's a lot. So the film is written by Joachim Booster, who is also the lead in the film. He plays Noah, and his character narrates a lot of the film, and through that narration he gives audiences a little bit of insight into Fire Island and its history and its place in queer culture. So it's quite educational in that way. It's a good introduction to this this place of queer history if you don't know anything about it, but it doesn't overload audiences with information about it, because this is really a fun film. It's basically a romantic comedy, and it's quite a big deal that this is a queer romantic comedy, because there aren't that many of those films, and I think it's probably the best that there is. The casting is brilliant, and the writing, and I think that's what makes it succeed so well, in that it's so authentic. It's written by queer people, it's performed by queer people, so there's a real understanding of queer culture, and because of that, it's more accurate, it's funny, and it tackles the issues that are actually prevalent for queer people, instead of redoing the same tropes that queer cinema has done for years and years and years. It feels progressive, and doesn't labour the same messages and the same storylines that we've had for years and years and years. As important as those storylines have been, it's good to have something fresh and fun. It's quite playful with the rom-com aspects, and it sort of it indulges itself in them, but then tries to sort of subvert them at the same time, and it's quite playful in how it does this. But basically it's just a big gay old time, and it's fab. There's a brilliant soundtrack, there's Charlie XCX remixes, there's Donna Summer needle drops, and there's even a Muna cover of a Britney classic. So I'm not sure what more you could ask for in terms of the music. But I think the most important thing about it is it's just good fun. It's an uplifting queer film, and there aren't enough uplifting queer films being released. So I really recommend that you give it a chance. You might learn something, you'll have a lot of fun, and I'm pretty sure you'll have a good laugh. But yeah, so it's streaming on Disney Plus if you want to give it a watch. I really recommend it. I can't believe you talked me into this again. I come here, I just feel terminally alone. Oh, are you all right? It's fine. It happens all the time.
Do you want some whiskey?
It would help with your knees.
You can trust me, I'm a doctor.
So that's Hamish Calvert with his choice, Fire Island. It's available now on Disney Plus. Talking about one streamer earlier, now we have another streamer. So here we have, to an extent, the Pride and Prejudice story told through a queer lens, a queer Asian lens. We have reviewed this before on, I think this was released last year. We reviewed it in the show. At the time, I was quite positive about it, rewatched it again. There's a lot of things. It's a standard rom-com to me, but I come back to the sense there are people out there that is not a standard rom-com. It's finally seeing themselves represented on screen, on the big screen, I guess to an extent here, we're talking about with a streamer, on a streaming platform. You want to see yourself represented. So yeah, for me it's a standard rom-com. It's a lot of fun. I didn't find it, I mean, I've seen other rom-coms that I love more, but pretty good. Danny, had you watched this before? What do you think of Fire Island?
No, this is first time for me, and also, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I also didn't realize, Maria said, we were chatting about it before, it's like, oh, it's take on Pride and Prejudice, and I was like, huh? What? Again, I'm not a big Pride and Prejudice person, so I don't really know like all the ins and outs, but yeah, whenever I pointed that out, I was like, oh, okay. Just adds like a whole other level of like, that's nice. But it was just like a real nice film to watch. You know, it was a really nice like rom-com, and it was nice to kind of have a film about like gay romance, queer romance, without it being kind of like a straight couple kind of put against it to be like, look, they're like us. You know, it was just like all queer characters, full, you know, queer cast, and they were allowed to just get on with their lives without it being mirrored against like, well, here's the like token straight couple, and just to mirror what's going on here. They just played out all their individual little character elements, and it wasn't a big deal that they were all gay, you know, and I thought that was really nice. And yeah, it just played out like, as you say, a fairly standard rom-com, but yeah, I just really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I had a nice time watching it.
Yeah, all the tropes, all the cliches we know from the genre are there. I am a sucker for a good rom-com, so I enjoyed this. I come back to the point, I think it's fairly run-of-the-mill, but I caveat that point by saying, and I know it, that it's not a run-of-the-mill rom-com, and I know there are viewers out there that this is very much not a run-of-the-mill, and it's all about representation. That's the whole idea of this season, being able to showcase all these films to recommend them out, because as we've alluded to, particularly on streamers, there's a lot of content, and I hate calling films content. There's a lot of films, a lot of series out there. Something like Fire Island could very easily get overlooked. So Maria, had you seen this before we asked you to watch it? And if not, what did you think of Fire Island?
I hadn't seen it, and it was one that I'd heard about, and I kept meaning to watch it, so it was nice that I had the opportunity to go, yep, now I'm going to sit down and watch this. And I really, really enjoyed it. I think part of what I enjoyed about it the most was I thought it was a really clever adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. And like you say, it's like wonderful Asian queer representation. It's just a really nice film to watch. It's very funny. There's lots of great like dry humor moments in it. And yeah, like I just really enjoyed watching it. Like there's not too much more I can say. And afterwards I was like talking to friends about it and was like, and this struck me, you know, like it's got some really clever writing like as an adaptation. And what I liked, I think the most about it was kind of showing like, you know, Fire Island is a place, it's, you know, it's a real place, it's a real place for the queer community to go to. And it was all about, it really was a celebration of that place. And I just thought that was really lovely as well.
But a criticism of their prices.
Yes.
If you've seen the film, you will get that reference, you will get that joke. So yeah, great choice. I think of the three films, well, apart from, you know, South Park, The End of Obesity, probably, you know, it's great to end on a positive note. So it's weird, the film that's in cinemas right now, on the big screen, when we're talking supposed doom and gloom about cinemas right now, the film that's in the multiplex is one we've been most negative about. But depressingly, the film that's on a streaming platform, or the films, I should say, that have been on streaming platforms have been the ones we've been most positive. So hopefully this trend will not continue throughout the year. You know, big screen will always champion it here at BanterFlix. But that is us pretty much out of time. So all that's left for me to do now is thank my two guests. So thank you very much, Maria.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks very much, Danny.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks very much for watching at home, and thanks to Hamish as well. We'll be back next week with another episode. But for now, until then, goodbye.